Okay, for today's demonstration, I'm going to show you how to jazz up your clear buttons. And Stampin' Up! Has a great assortment of clear buttons. You get 24 pieces in each pack. Now, the thing I like about these is that they come in different sizes and they come in different shapes. So you get a lot of bang for your buck, especially when you're doing multiple projects. Now, clear buttons for me are great on their own, but sometimes I like to jazz them up and to make them match my project a little bit better. Sorry about that. So what I did today is I did two things. The first is we are going to attach some designer series paper to the back of one of these buttons using Crystal Effects. And then the second is using Crystal Effects, reinker, and glitter to color directly onto a button to make it our own special color. Because as we know, Stampin' Up! Buttons don't always come in the colors that we may need. So we get to make our own. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to take a piece of designer series paper. These buttons are 1 inch by 1 inch, so you can use a punch or you can just cut it out on with your cutting board. And you are going to just take your Crystal Effects and lightly cover the surface of your button. Now you want to make sure that you don't use too much, and you want to make sure that you don't use too little, because if you use too little, you might get little air pockets or bubbles that will show through. And if you use too much, when you're trying to squeeze it down, it's just going to really come out on the edges and it'll be pretty sticky on your fingers. But if you're going to do one or the other, I would recommend using more than you need, because you can always wash your hands. Okay, so I've applied the liquid or the Crystal Effects. Now I'm going to put the piece that I want facing the outside of my project directly straight down onto the Crystal Effects. And I turn it over and I make sure that it's lined up the way that I want it to line up. And smooth it out, make sure there's no air bubbles. And that's it. I let it dry, and then I used my paper piercing tool to punch through those holes, and then I used linen thread to thread through it. Now you can use any of the ribbons that we have. I recommend smaller because it's easier to get through, and then you don't have to cut a really deep edge in your grosgrain ribbon should you choose to use that. Okay, the next method, you need a little cup, and you can see that I've just been reusing mine. Put a little bit of Crystal Effects in there. You don't need much because you don't have a lot of surface area you're working with. However, if you are doing multiple buttons, you may want to use a little bit more. So I've put in a little bit of Crystal Effects. I put in about 2 to 3 drops of reinker. Depends on how many buttons I'm going to be doing at one time. And then some glitter, and I'm using some of the fine Cosmo glitter. Okay, just sprinkle that in. The more glitter you have mixed in, the more glitter you will see on your in your final project. Okay, so now I take a little paintbrush and just mix it all together so it's all blended. The Crystal Effects takes on the color of the reinker quite nicely, and then make sure your side is clean and literally just paint directly onto it. Now, the thicker the paint coverage, the richer the color will be on your finished project. So you want to make sure that you don't have a lot of thin spots, and that should be pretty easy to achieve since you're not going to be moving the button around much. In fact, you really don't even need to touch it at all. And unless you're working on an incline, you should have no movement in where the Crystal Effects goes. So that is that. That's all it takes. Again, I used some linen thread, and now you can see that my button, well, if I could get it in focus, is nice and sparkly. And it takes, I'd say, probably about 15 to 20 minutes to dry, depending on the thickness of your paint. You could also speed up the process by using your heat gun, but remember not to over scorch it, or else it could potentially melt the plastic. So that's it for how to dress up some clear buttons. Thanks and good luck!